Hello, friends. Welcome to the Ancient Health Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Motley. And today I have a friend of a friend, and she's become my friend now. We have Samantha Skyring of Oryx Desert Salt. And this is very important because there's a lot of literature out there, a lot of studies about the importance of salt, sodium levels within your blood, within your cells, and how it actually will help many systems in your body. And I want to talk about how her salt, which comes from like an ancient underground lake, which I love stories like this, how we can use something that's more bioavailable. So Samantha or Sam, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. And congratulations, you actually pronounced it the same as I do, as an Oryx desert salt, as opposed to most Americans call it Oryx, which is not quite right. So I love that as a start.
I'm glad. I'll say this. I am not the best at, is that the word enunciation? Like I will do that. So sometimes I'll tell people, can you spell your name? Cause I'll say something wrong, wrongly. And so I've been better at it. So, seriously, this is so great. I like to hear your personal story. And I think the people that are listening too like to know like how your movement into learning about salt and how it affects your own health. Like, why were you passionate about it? Why did you move into studying this?
So as with life, serendipity is a beautiful thing. So I actually had an NGO for 7 years doing facilitated drumming workshops in very rural communities as a transformation through celebration upliftment project. And then there was the financial crash. And a colleague he had actually been looking for a food product that has a spiritual quality to it. And he happened to meet the daughter of a salt pan owner. And, salt is sacred. It has a spiritual quality to it. It's in every religion. It's in every culture. There's lots of superstition around it. But it is also in our tears, in our sweat, and in our blood. There is a beautiful quote of Khalil Gibran. So in a way, we are these living oceans, living, walking oceans, because the sodium and the balance of salt in our bodies is almost identical to the balance in the oceans, which is fascinating. So there really is this beautiful flow and balance that happens. And I suppose, and I've actually even never thought about this, but, as the moon affects the oceans with the tides. And so, our emotions and our hormones, and we have tides too, which is incredible. So I was sort of looking for something to do, seeing as though the project naturally came to a closure. I had recently had my son. And salt's that one product that, it's so familiar, we know it, and yet do we know it? It's something that is in every single meal, the smallest product in any meal, the smallest ingredient. And yet if you don't put it in your meal, you're certainly going to notice it. So why are we not giving it more attention, as to how it affects our own health, if it makes such a difference in a recipe and in a meal?
So whenever you have this angle of salt about how in life, like you have a passion because it's presenting itself to you. When I was younger, I don't know anybody out there that's listening. There are times when I went through these phases that I would like something that was salty. I would like something that was sweet. And again, I love going into this angle, like even with health. I didn't realize like there was different qualities of salt, because whenever we talk about our cell's health, I've forgotten how important, let's say, sodium is, potassium, calcium. All these are very important to a cell's health. And I remember that a doctor friend of mine told me that when you have a lot of muscle strength, it does depend on the salt levels within your blood and within your tissue, because water by osmosis will follow salt. So if you guys think about there, like literally if you have a lot of salt in a tissue, water will flow to that area to help make what we call osmotic gradient, make it equal. So that's why they say the individuals that have really strong adrenal glands and kidneys usually have bigger muscles, because they basically handle salt better. They will actually distribute salt better. That's why some people can work out really quickly and their muscles build really fast because of the salt. Now, all that to say, there is different quality of salts. Like I started studying this. Can you touch a bit on like your purity? Because I didn't realize that you had a lot of microplastics. Like, is that right? Like there's a lot of stuff in salts out there right now, and there's a different quality in salts.
Well, firstly, I think we need to define salt.
Yes, yes,
Because,
yes.
uh, is a good starting point, because we refer to all that's available seemingly that is salt that is on the shelf,
Mm-hmm.
and for me, salt is how nature produces it, how the
Mm-hmm.
earth and the elements bring together this magical, mystical crystal that is so essential and is available across the entire globe, the entire world. Every country has salt deposits and lakes and so on. So it's always been accessible to humans. And
Mm.
however, as we moved into the industrial age, we really started putting our hands on everything and changing the nature of things.
Mm.
So table salt is denatured salt. It might look like salt and it might taste like salt, but in a way it's fake because it doesn't have the balance of all the minerals and the trace elements that salt is supposed to have, that nature creates and puts together in this magnificent ratio, which is so complex that we don't even understand. And we know
Mm.
that salt is predominantly sodium and chloride and a micro amount of minerals and trace elements. But it's that combination that the body recognizes as a whole food. So if those are stripped out, and suddenly you've got essentially two ingredients, and of
Mm-hmm.
course with table salt. So table salt was produced predominantly for industry. So it goes into paint and plastic and textiles and paper, and they need it in these huge volumes, and it's obviously got to flow freely. And so they put chemicals in that stop it from absorbing moisture, anti-caking and free flow chemicals, exactly what it says.
Oh.
But salt's natural, its magic, its gift, and its offer to our bodies is that it is hygroscopic and it absorbs moisture, exactly what you said on the osmosis. So if there's salt that's being mixed with chemicals that stop it from absorbing moisture, we're completely defying salt's gift to the body. And
Ah.
and because they're
Yes.
created in such huge volumes, it goes through a whole chemical, like not a chemical process, but like a factory process of creating. It goes through ovens that are at very high temperatures. So it would,
Really?
absolutely, which means that the salt is then dehydrated, which then would
Mm-hmm.
have other effects because the body then needs to use water that's in the body or in the cells to move out of the cells to, mix with the salt that is dehydrated. So it needs more. So it can only really be creating complications for the body, and they're micro. But
Mm-hmm.
obviously, with time and constant use, the body isn't being able to replenish the balance that exists in and out of the cells,
Mm-hmm.
um, and stay hydrated optimally. And I think there's, it's so sad that salt's been so demonized because I don't
Yeah.
believe we're eating enough salt.
Yeah.
Because we've been told for our whole lives that salt is bad for you.
Yes.
Whereas, it wouldn't have been traded.
This is
So
great.
1,000 years ago, 100 grams of salt, which is what, 3.52 ounces, would have been equivalent to its weight in gold.
What?
Yeah, right?
That's
So in the
amazing. I love
yeah,
this.
so we valued it then for how essential it was, and we didn't have, we weren't overloaded with information. We were more instinctual. We understood the importance of it. Plus, it was obviously used as a preservative. It
Yeah.
was it was so valuable that they used it. So the word salary comes from salt. It was paid as a salary, um,
Oh, I got to write
right?
that down. Keep going.
So,
I'm writing notes down. This is great.
it's been very curious for me. I've sort of contemplated why does it have no value? How come can you buy 500 grams? Sorry, hello everybody. I'm on the southern tip of Africa in Cape Town, and we do grams, which still not quite sure why you guys aren't on the metric system. But
Oh, I can tell you a lot of reasons why. Go ahead, I'm listening. Keep going. I'm sorry.
That's a whole nother story. But why a packet or a a jar or a tube of table salt on the shelf has no value? What's it, maybe $1.99? When 1,000 years ago that would have been, $1,000 back then. And I believe because it has been so adulterated and so processed and so changed from its original quality, that it actually does not have any value to the body.
Wow. And so back then, I love these stories. Back then, it was so known for the many uses it could do. Like it would help with hydration. It would help with preservation of meats, right? Because people pack it in salt. Did they do, on a side note, was there any healing process? I know it helps the body heal, but did they ever use it for like healing wounds or anything like that? And that's why it was so valuable back then?
I'm sure they would have. Yeah, I'd imagine that, they were that much in touch with food as medicine.
Yes.
We have, right now in the supermarket, how much of that is real food?
Yes.
Or how much of it is just chemicals put together, some ingredients that have been heated and again adulterated with chemicals to stop it. I had a little argument with my office team the other day. They wanted to get a coffee machine. So I was like, well, if you're going to get a real coffee machine, you have to buy full cream, good quality milk. And they were like, no, but I really like UHT milk. I'm like, but it can sit on a shelf, milk for an entire year, not in the fridge. Surely there has to be something really wrong with that,
Yes.
So, if we were to step back and look at how we were so much closer to the earth, yes, the important things like meat and fish and so on was preserved in meat. Our vegetables for the winter times, sauerkraut was, again, pickled in salt.
Yes.
And I'm most certain, I haven't read up on it, that they would have understood as well how beneficial it was. So we would have been a lot more in touch with our bodies. Whereas now, we're on our computers and we're stuck in our heads and we're less embodied. We're less in touch with how we feel after eating sugar. And I think those of us who have experimented with, let's say, going off coffee for 6 months, and then you have a cup of coffee and you feel that rush. But if you're drinking it every day or you're having it 2 or 3 or 4 times a day, your body, builds up its capacity to handle, which, and with sugar as well. Like if you're eating it all the time, you don't feel the effects, but suddenly if you go off it and you have sugar, and you can also feel that rush and that buzz. And I guess if, in olden times, maybe they were working the fields, but they would have, I would imagine, been more in touch with their thirst and their hydration needs. And food wouldn't be so readily available in a refrigerator. So we really we've lost touch in a way with our natural instincts. Even with our own taste buds. This is an incredible, exquisite, such highly complex organ that has all these varying tastes on it. And often we sense we want something. We most often will go and grab food as opposed to feeling that, no, we're actually dehydrated. Or if you're wanting something salty, it's because the body is craving salty.
Would that mean, like with the salt, like you're saying, if something is saltier, like you crave it, like is that why like the better quality of salt would be saltier? Like if somebody puts it in their mouth, like I've got a good quality salt, if it's saltier, does that even show the grade of it if it's salty or no?
I would say not. So what's interesting about Oryx,
Yep.
and we'll share a bit more about that just now, but is that it actually has a very full flavor, and some chefs call it a sweet salt. So it opens up all of the taste buds. So it's a
Mm.
little bit umami-ish. I guess it's like a beautiful fine wine. You know, wines come from different regions, and they have a different terroir or a taste profile. So different salts around the world would have different tastes. So in fact, I work with a very beautiful chef in South Africa. His name is Craig Cormack. His
Uh-huh.
restaurant is called Salt. And
Uh-huh.
currently he has 233 salts in his collection
Heavens.
from around the
Really?
world. And
Mm.
that's not all of them. So there are these incredible places where salt comes from.
Mm.
Um, and mostly, and when we met at, thank you, Dave, for his beautiful biohacking conference. When we met
Mm-hmm.
there, I'm sure we would have given you the taste test where I asked people to give a tequila fist because we've been shaking hands or touching banisters, so that's almost clean when you're in a public space.
Mm-hmm.
And taste Oryx, and then to taste sea salt after. And it's such an interesting experiment. And I've done this really thousands of people at hundreds of trade shows around the world. And when people taste the Oryx, there's it's salty, and there's yes. And then when you
Mm-hmm.
taste other salts, and predominantly it's sea salt, because that's been the most produced source of salt, there seems to be a bitterness to it or a sharpness. And whether that comes from the processing or where it comes from the source. But I would say 8 out of 10 people generally pucker, their face kind of contracts and, oh, that's salty. So it is actually a lot saltier. And
Mm-hmm.
in a way, again, if we thinking about how the body speaks, body talks, all the different sayings that we have, outside of your body, if you're having a really bad day and you're not in flow, and so when the body's sort of contracting, there's something that says, I'm not sure if I'm resonating with that. And 1 out of 100 or 500 or 1,000 people tend to do that when they taste Oryx. And I find that really fascinating as a testament in itself. And that's
Mm.
only the taste profile. And yet, for me, it's also, in fact, I had a beautiful conversation with Barbara O'Neill at the Health Optimization Summit in London,
Mm-hmm.
and was sharing with her. And so one of the phenomenons about Oryx, one is where it comes from, this magnificent salt pan, which
Mm-hmm.
is in the Kalahari Desert, which
Mm-hmm.
is 900,000 square kilometers or 9 million hectares, which is 1.5 times the size of Texas. The closest town is 175 miles away. So it's a 2-hour drive in the most beautiful, magnificent region, because it's just so spacious and so sparse. There's nothing there. There's so much richness in the nothingness. It's sand and blue sky. And they discovered underground a 55 million ton aquifer that is renewed and sustained by subterranean rivers. They
Mm.
did testing on the Dwika, on the rock strata through which the streams flow, and
Mm-hmm.
they've been tested as 280 to 300 million years old. And then the fascination is this brine, the salt water, is
Mm-hmm.
oversaturated, which is, and I've had many conversations with different salt producers when I attend food trade shows internationally,
Mm-hmm.
and sea salt is 13 to 20% saturation. So it takes them a year or so or much longer for it to build up the saturation, depending on the heat, the location. And then it only starts crystallizing when that saturation has built up to fully saturated. Whereas when we pour our brine up onto the salt pan, it is already oversaturated. And so it crystallizes in only one lunar cycle, and which is also, we now have this desert at 120 degrees Fahrenheit. We have this
Mm-hmm.
combination, this alchemical magic of oversaturated salt water, and then this high temperatures in the Kalahari Desert. And so it crystallizes in 4 weeks only. So Barbara was
Wow.
saying that, wow, absolutely. So Barbara was saying that the minerals would really be, kind of compact and can't quite find the right word, but because it happens so quickly,
Hmm.
there's something where it's mineral dense. Um,
Hmm.
and and that I hadn't thought about that before, and that felt quite intuitive, or just a picture of it crystallizing in such a short time, and so it would it would hold the minerals in a sort of a positive charge. And I went up to the salt pan a couple of years ago to do a mini documentary.
Hmm.
I'd only visited previously for a couple of hours, and I really wanted footage. I wanted to show people this magnificent place where it comes from, because there's no fresh water in the region, which means almost this entire region is uninhabitable. There
Hmm.
is a lodge that I stay at, which is about 5 miles away, but they truck their water in 175 miles from the big town that is closest. Um, and so the region is sparse. There's no air pollution, even from in a way, from an energetic perspective. If you
Hmm.
go into a dense city, you can feel the busyness of it. Whereas here, there's just this immense spaciousness and vastness and stillness. And we had planned the photo shoot over 2 days. And on the
Hmm.
second afternoon, we were gifted a thunderstorm of epic proportions,
Oh.
quadraphonic lightning, this wall of water that we literally counted down because we had sent a drone up to catch some footage. So we were like counting down when the rain would arrive, and our drone landing back in our hands.
Mm.
Um, and then 20 minutes of just incredible downpour. And then
Hmm.
went out, and the beautiful, that smell on earth after the rains, and the earth was steaming, and then there were these incredible colors in the sky. And I went round the back of the chalet and looked out in the direction of the salt pan, but they were behind the sand dunes, so I wasn't able to see them. But there was a double rainbow,
Mm.
and suddenly I realized how elemental the salt is, that because it crystallizes in 4 weeks, it almost feels like it captures and is activated and is imprinted by a lunar cycle, the beautiful stars, the desert breeze, the hot African sun, and then potentially rainbows.
That's
um,
amazing.
and
Definitely.
it was a real moment for me, when having that, it was very special.
I think when you're talking about the compression and about the actual amount of heat and pressure to create that type of salt, and it's that big of a lake, that is enormous, 1.5 times the size of Texas. Does that give the salt, of course, like if you used iodized salt, or if you used the salt that's made, it has a different type of charge to it. That's a big point I wanted to come across too. So salts have different charge. I know it's sodium chloride, but different types of salt would have different types of charges depending on how they're formed in nature or how they're processed, and that would give you an idea of like how they would help your body.
Absolutely. And I mean, thank you. You've just sort of planted a seed, because I mean, I've recently been seeing these tests where they put an electrode onto a plant and hear the resonance of the music. It would
Wow.
be a really fascinating experiment to do the same thing on salt. And
Yep.
it reminds me of Dr. Masaru Emoto's work. Do you know the
I
Japanese
love it.
scientist?
Could you remind everybody? It's like that he used salt somehow to record frequencies or see how frequencies from a body affected it. Is that right?
Absolutely. This incredible Japanese scientist, Dr. Masaru Emoto,
Mm-hmm.
his book, Hidden Messages in Water.
Mm.
And his discovery was that if you take a bottle and you can either write a word or set an intention or speak your word. I mean, I think one of the first sentences in the Bible is, the power of the word.
Mm-hmm.
And and then he took a drop and froze it, and it crystallized. And then he took macro photography, and he tried this out on many positive words and many negative words. The positive words all have their own magnificent, unique structure that looks similar to a snowflake. Perfect symmetry, absolutely beautiful. Whereas the negative words have no form. It's like they look dead. Um,
Mm.
and so his message and his mission was to alert people to how your thoughts are creating a crystalline structure and shifting and imprinting on, on our cellular, on the water structure within our bodies. And
Mm.
in fact, there was even a picture of a polluted river where they did prayer around the river, and how it changed from before and after. And
Really?
yeah. So it reminds me of when we say grace, we sit around a table and we hold hands and we bless the food and we bless the person that made it. And that is an intention setting. That's the power of our word, giving thanks. And I
Hmm.
believe gratitude and thanks are, one of the highest vibrations. It's up there with love. And I'm sure most people can attest to when you're in that feeling of gratitude. It's so uplifting. It's so full and it's so giving.
Wow.
Versus, let's say somebody's in the kitchen and they're grumpy and they've had a really bad day and they slap a meal in front of you. There's something
Mm.
that the quality is not the same. And I
Mm.
think by
Mm.
having a moment and actually, putting your hands or putting your intention or having a moment of silence,
Mm.
um, and giving the food a blessing can shift that. So
Definitely.
yeah, so if that's the case, then this beautiful salt that's lying in the middle of this magnificent, spacious, vast desert, remote and pristine desert, with
Mm.
all the elements, it can only have a different quality to it, its resonance, its frequency. Um,
Mm.
versus a salt that's gone through a factory, that's been stripped of its minerals because it needs to be cleaned, and
Mhm.
have chemicals added, which are, chemically produced. It's completely changing the frequency of that salt and how the body would be able to absorb it, utilize it, recognize it, and metabolize it.
I think it's a really good point. I'm writing that down though for me, Sam, because it changes the frequency of the salt, and I guess the strength of the salt. So when you have a nature that's actually creating the actual salt as opposed to man-made, which I would naturally go with what nature made, of course. We can see that there's a change in the salt. Now,
Mm,
with the salt having different shape, charge, form, when it's made like in this lake, in this huge desert,
mhm.
um, and it had such great value in the past, did did the people that were using the salary, the salt, when it started to decline, did it just happen over gradual time, or they saw it as just a big money making opportunity, and then that's when the value and the quality of the salt started changing, or did it happen really quickly when, like, I guess people were seen as a money making opportunity? Because that's amazing that you just said
Mm,
salt made in nature, salt with
mm,
that frequency. They must have known that that was the energy behind it. Like, we know this is such valuable mineral,
mhm.
like that's compared to gold, and I'm still thinking about that. So did they found a way to like make fake salt to make it cheaper? Is that what they did?
So it was at the start of the Industrial Revolution, so I think around
Uh,
1910, where we started producing things en masse, and then not quite sure how to, and I need to do some more research into this. It's almost like a binding, agent. So hence it goes into paper and plastic. So PVC, C stands for chloride. And
Mm,
then because they needed to produce it, because they were producing paper, or they were producing textiles, and it had a different quality than just putting plain water in by putting salted water. In fact, actually, that reminds me of when I was younger. I used to dye my clothes different colors, and you would dye it, and then you would always put it into a high salt water in order
mhm,
to for the ink and the dye to kind of solidify into the fabric.
mm,
So it's a really fascinating mineral. You know, we eat it. It's the only sort of rock in a way that we consume, and it has, as you said earlier, it has healing properties for the skin,
mhm.
um, and it has, you know, preservation quality. So it really is this. In fact, I think they sometimes refer to it as the um, oh, it's actually just gone out my head. The sixth element. Um,
Mm.
that there is, you know, air, water, fire. I don't know what the fifth one.
And
Oh,
salt.
ether, and salt as the sixth element. But
Mm,
the word that you used just now, Chris, which really landed for me, is potency,
mhm.
which I really love. And I've brought my son up on homeopathy. Discovered it fortunately a few years before I fell
Love
pregnant.
it. I love
Love
it.
it, love
I
it.
love I do it every day. I use homeopathy, like literally, like check. I got homeopathy boxes and everything.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I've got one in my bag. And isn't it that in homeopathy, the most potent frequency, the most potent remedy is the one that is most diluted?
Mhm,
And so it has, so it's almost nothing is left of the original product, but the essence, the energy, the frequency still remains that the
mhm.
body recognizes and can work with. Um,
Yes.
so yes, it feels like this natural salt that comes from this magnificent area that's untouched by humans, even energetically, because there's no humans that live in the area,
Mhm,
would have a potency of nature in the elements, rather than
mm,
something salt, sadly, that comes from an ocean, which we have decimated.
mhm,
Um, so we produce salt from the oceans for thousands or millions of years. We still don't know. We're still figuring out our past and our history.
mhm,
But obviously, if you live at the coast and there's rocks, one can see how the salt builds up and how it can be collected.
yeah.
But the amount of fertilizer and pesticide runoff and industrial contamination and radioactive waste barrels that have been dumped into the oceans. Cruise liners, apparently the cruise liners alone dump 1 billion tons of sewage into the oceans every single year,
Phew.
right? And I live in
1
Africa,
billion
1
tons.
billion tons. Then you've got the poor regions like India and Africa. They're places where there's effluent running off into the ocean, into the rivers and into the oceans. Um, so then that's all running into the oceans. And where is sea salt predominantly produced from? They collect it from close to the land. So almost where, I mean, I'd imagine in the far deep oceans, it wouldn't, I don't know what the dilution would be there.
Mhm,
But certainly, on the coastal regions would be the most polluted parts of the oceans.
mm.
There was actually a study that was done in South Africa, and it was pretty frightening, actually. Um,
Really? Yeah.
so,
What
and
did it
obviously
say?
farmlands, the how dense the pollution was in terms of, I mean, there was E. coli found and various other things in those coastal regions. So, and then of course, because of this incredible um, um, product that we produced, plastic,
Yep.
so unbelievably useful, and yet takes however many thousands of years to biodegrade. And when it does, it goes back into the microplastics that it was actually produced from. And I
Mm,
think we had a scenario some years ago where a container with the microbeads
yeah.
um, fell off a ship and ended up on our coastline. And I went with one gathering of people sitting, with a bowl and picking up these micro beads, and that's how plastic products are produced. And so that's what it breaks down to. And then, of course, it would break
Wow.
further down into nanoplastics. And I mean, there's the most shocking news from, I think, about 6 weeks ago,
Hmm.
where 27 whales beached somewhere in Europe, and they did an autopsy on them, and their stomachs were completely filled with plastic. And
Goodness.
I believe
Yeah.
that whales have an incredible intelligence, both whales and dolphins, and it almost feels like they were coming to give us a message. Please, humans, you are like, this is our environment. This is where we breathe, where we eat, and you're destroying it. We know they're the islands of plastic, and with the sun and the sea, which, sea salt is very abrasive. Um,
Hmm.
and so the plastic in the oceans, they get ground down by the elements into the micro nanoplastics. And so if you're then pumping up and drawing up ocean seawater to produce salt, then whatever's in that ocean seawater would
Hmm.
actually be condensed in the sea salt, because they need to build up the saturation. So they pour it up into a pan, and it evaporates, and they need to put more until that saturation builds up to 100% before it starts crystallizing. So
Mm.
personally, sea salt, thank you, no thank you.
Mm. No, this is good. They say with thank you, no thank you. So they found it in the guts of the whales,
Yeah,
and you said that the parts of microplastics and nanoplastics are so high within the sea salt that it would be very hard for them. What is the like with the lake being able to the desert do it naturally? The process for them to like try to eliminate all the microplastics out of the sea salt or the sea water, plus trying to condense that out. I'm not saying they would cut corners, but I would think it'd be a very hard process to just try to get pure salt from that process, wouldn't it?
I don't think they try.
So all the things that you see on the storefront, and I'm not naming any other brands, I'm not being harsh, but when you go to the store and let's say you're looking and we love Oryx and we're like, okay, this is a great brand because it tastes delicious. I want to tell everybody out there, I am not just saying that. When I got my bottles, I was like, um, to me, you do taste a difference. And what is, of course, want your brand, but what do you see when you go to the store? What do you think?
Well, so just to let your listeners know, so at the moment, Whole Foods nationally carries the Oryx Desert Salt Grinder, the refill, pepper
Mm-hmm.
grinder, and pepper refill. The peppers from small scale farmers in Madagascar. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so there's a full range. So there would be your sea salt brand, and there
Mm-hmm.
would be Himalayan, and then there's a lot of salt in doy packs, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily in the grinders, but grinders are very convenient. And uh, the research that I've done in the USA, the grinders that I have seen all have a polycarb or a plastic um, grinder top, grinder head.
Yeah.
So even the grinding mechanism is plastic, and salt is hard and abrasive. So
Mm-hmm.
when you're grinding your sea salt or Himalayan salt, it is slowly, and you can actually hear it. It's very cranky and quite difficult to
Mm-hmm.
grind. And if you were to take note when you first buy your bottle, the granules are quite fine, and you can see the teeth are very sharp. But if you go into your kitchen now, if you have a sea salt grinder or a Himalayan, and it's nearing the end of the bottle, have a look
Yeah.
and see if those teeth are sharp or if they're all rounded off. Because if they're rounded off, it means that plastic has been ground into your food and you've eaten it. And plastic is an endocrine disruptor. It's going to mess with the hormones. It's the body doesn't know how to process or what to do with it. Um,
Mm.
so so we really need to be mindful of the source and the packaging. Um, and So the grinder that we've chosen for Oryx.
Yes, that's what I was going to ask you. Like, how does yours differ then? Because you said, yeah, I like, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this is a ceramic mechanism,
Mm-hmm.
which is baked at, if it's 600 degrees Celsius, what would that be in Fahrenheit? 1200, 1500 Fahrenheit. So it's ceramic is, it doesn't wear down. In fact, I had a chef the other day reach out to me and say that she had thrown her grinders away after 7 years and had to buy a new one. So for
Wow.
$6.99,
Wow.
I would say that's really good value for money. You can buy a carton of hummus, or you could buy a kombucha that you're going to drink, in a short while. And here you
Yeah.
can buy a bottle that you can just keep refilling and refilling and refilling. So one of our values and sort of hashtags is refill, not landfill. So if you're buying a grinder and you just keep refilling it with the refill boxes, and please put Oryx desert salt in and not sea salt in. You're going to be saving from that bottle and head, or from many landing up in needing to be recycled or ending up in landfill. So last year I did a calculation, and all of the restaurants, we supply and service about 3,500 restaurants in South Africa, as well as all of our consumers who buy the refill boxes.
Yeah. So you can refill those and keep using those within the salt. Yes.
Yes, exactly. We saved 817,000 bottles and heads from landfill, which is 12 20-foot containers of bottles and grinder heads that didn't end up in landfill, which is quite a significant impact.
No,
Which
I'm going to start doing that. I'm guilty of like trying to buy too. So I really am with you on that. I'll go by today and get some more because I got to get some more. Actually, this is great. With your products though, I love that I did not know that about the teeth. I'm going to put that on a reel because that's really good. Um, when you, as people are seeing the importance of salt, I think one of the questions too is when we talked about hydration, and you're starting to see that there is people that have chronic dehydration, and chronic dehydration. I mean, across our country, like people are having horrible kidney issues. They're having a lot of, really, I think it's related. I think they're having dehydration, cramping, a lot of issues with muscle twitching. They're having issues with like kidney imbalance and kidney UTIs, bladder infections. Do they have it? I know it helps with the hydration and the quality of the salt. So whenever you look at salt in this way, it's not to me just a table like set. It's not something that you're just doing to have a better taste. It is for your health, right?
Absolutely, entirely and completely. So salt is a conductor, and we are electromagnetic beings. We fire and wire with all of our neurons, our nerve impulses. So if we don't have the medium for our bodies to actually function, then, or if the body is dehydrated and the cells and intercellular fluid are all kind of contracted and not free flowing, then you're going to be tired. Your muscles will cramp because they literally need to be hydrated, and they need that salt in order for the fluid to move in and out of the cells. So actually just drinking water is also not good, because that can flush your kidneys, and can often not hydrate you to the level that your body is needing. So even if you were to put a grind or 2 or 3 of salt into your water, it turns it into an electrolyte, and it just, thanks. The body's like, yay, I can work with that. I can really hydrate. And I had my own personal experience quite recently, which was, I talk about this stuff and I read about it, and generally, I've got a water bottle on me all the time, and I've got my salt in it. But the one day I had a meeting at the office around 3:00, and I was so embarrassed. I kept yawning. I was like, I'm sorry, John, you're not boring, but and then I'd yawn again. Now, I suddenly realized that I hadn't drunk water. So I
Yeah.
grabbed my bottle, I chunked back sort of a third or so, like I really had a good amount, which had salt in it.
Mhm.
And I did not yawn again. And I was like, wow. So immediately it energized me. It made me more present, it allowed my cognitive function to, operate better. And in fact, my previous social media person, I think was born with cancer, and she had terrible gastro problems, and always had acid reflux and what have you. And then when she started working with Oryx and started researching and understanding how important salt was, she
Mhm.
upped her salt intake. And now she doesn't have digestive issues and she doesn't have acid reflux. So how
That's
interesting is that?
amazing.
Because
Yeah.
you need salt in order to create the acid in the, is it hydrochloric acid in the
Yes.
stomach to,
Yes.
digest your food.
Mhm.
So it really is essential for every function, and especially any women out there who are pregnant. So if
Mhm.
you imagine now you're creating this beautiful watery bath for your little one to develop in, and that is the amniotic fluid is a salty liquid.
Mhm.
um, and in fact, the taste buds in pregnant women diminish because the body wants more salt. So I
Mm.
hear of these wild and crazy stories of people eating rocks and earth and raw potatoes and all sorts of crazy things because their body is craving something that it's needing.
That's
And your blood volume increases by 30%. So if your blood is salty, invariably you need more salt. So just be aware of that and up your salt intake if you're pregnant. And
mhm.
we had one testimony of a woman who was an endurance athlete, so she was very ripped. And then she gave birth to a little one, and she was so struggling to breastfeed, but really wanted to. Anyway, she then went on to an electrolyte, which has Oryx desert salt in. It's an electrolyte in South Africa that's called Revive, so 1,000 milligrams. And suddenly she upped her salt intake through the electrolyte or through this powder that has magnesium and potassium in as well. And suddenly her breast milk started flowing.
Wow,
So
wow, wow, wow. What's the name of that again? What was the
so
name of
it's
that?
called Revive. It's not yet available in the USA. It is available in the UK as they had to change names because of a trademark. So it's called Repower in the UK, and Revive in South Africa. Also, I mean, electrolyte powders are amazing. Check the source. So I think the other thing that I didn't mention about Oryx, which I'm really proud of and feels really important, is that it's a sustainable and a renewable resource. So
Mhm.
there are options, and there are sources of salt that are ancient underground lakes. So that's referred to as rock salt. So
Yes.
Himalayan is a rock salt. It's an ancient sea of 280 million years old, which is in Pakistan. I think it's 200 kilometers from the Himalayas. So I'm not quite sure why it was called Himalayan salt, maybe because it sounds very exotic.
Mhm.
But that is a non-renewable resource. It cannot reproduce itself. It's ancient, and then it is extracted, and one doesn't know for how many generations it will
Mhm.
still be available because
Mhm.
we can't see underground. And it could be many, it could be 500 years still. But at some point, hopefully we're all still around, or humanity is around in 500 years. I don't know.
Mhm.
Um, um, but at some point, it won't be available.
Yeah.
But I'm so fascinated by Himalayan salt
Mhm.
because I think it came around early 80s, and it was pre the internet, and yet it became a global phenomenon. And yes, it's mineral rich, absolutely. Um, and for me, it was almost the color was so valuable to its
Mm,
success because it's pretty, it was different to sea salt. So I love that in that, oh wow, you get pink salt and white salt, and then you get the Hawaiian red Alea salt and
yeah.
volcanic salt and Iranian Persian blue salt. And, you know, there are these incredible salts from all around the world. There's a beautiful salt in Australia called Murray River, which is also a very clean source because it comes from a river source and not from the ocean. And but I believe that it was almost humanity, consciousness needed that upgrade because I was brought up on salt. Here it's called See How It Runs, which
Yeah.
might remind you of another product. And it runs freely because it's got the chemicals that stop it from clumping. So if you were to have two sources and you were to put even just grind Oryx salt onto it, and then you were to
Mhm.
pour table salt on another one, within a couple of days, Oryx desert salt would be wet and it would have moisture
Mm,
because it
mm.
absorbs the moisture from the air. And table salt would still be dry because
Yes, yes.
it's repelling. It's no longer hygroscopic and absorbing moisture. Um,
Mm,
I was brought up on table salt, and in order, on my email signature it says powered by desert salt because it is a power. We are these. The mitochondria we know are the batteries and the power cells of our cells, or the power batteries of our cells, and even in the battery in your car, you put water because it needs. You don't put salt water into a battery, but that's how our body functions. And so, really experiment, try for yourself.
try it for yourself.
Yeah, maybe put aside what the doctors who do between apparently 6 and 8 hours, or even if it's 24 hours of nutrition in an entire 3 or 5 year degree, how much nutrition can you learn in in so few hours?
Mm,
And really seem to have gone away from the Hippocratic oath of food is thy medicine. That was
yes.
Hippocrates for almost, what he is known for is food is thy medicine. So if salt is, available everywhere, we put it in
Mm-mm.
everything. Start having an experiment with yourself. Like, start upping your salt levels in the morning. So what I've done is I've taken half a box of Oryx and I've put it into a glass jar with spring water. So
Mhm,
there's a layer of salt on the bottom.
mhm,
And that's called a soleil, where it's oversaturated, and then the water is really mineral rich and dense. And I put
mhm.
a tablespoon or two of that into a cup with some lemon, and that's what I put into my drinking water, is two or
Yeah.
three. And in the beginning, just put one, and maybe you can up it and start feeling how your energy levels increase. And maybe you don't need that afternoon nap, or that 3 o'clock where you just really want to go home and get on the couch, and you don't want to power through that next meeting that you've got to have online. um,
Mm.
and yeah, and really, try it for yourself. Give your body the opportunity to talk back to you and let you know how it's feeling, and what the energy levels are when you consume more salt.
And that's great. I'm telling you, no, I think that'd be a great point because if we could put that like in the caption, like, and we could talk with Christy about like what you just said and like put down like what you would recommend. And I love the ideas of, or the conversations between the difference between Himalayan salt and table salt, iodized salt and real salt that you're talking about. I think this is like one of the things that most of the patients that I've seen probably are suffering from your description, which I'm going to start testing them. I do a lot of frequency testing and muscle testing, and I'll actually look at their blood work too, and I'll see what their sodium levels are at now. I think
Amazing.
it's a very big key for kidney health and adrenal health to see the vitality and grounding force of a person. So that's really
Mm.
important.
And there was actually a machine at the biohacking conference. And I did a test, and my frequency on this particular machine was, um, I think it was 16, somewhere around there. And somebody else came and they tested, and theirs was 11. Anyway,
Hmm.
so I ground some Oryx into a cup, and they drank a cup of water with some salt in it, and then got them to sort of walk around the not quite the block, but the area in the conference hall, and they came back, and it had immediately picked up to around 13.
That's amazing.
So really wanted to sit there for the whole day and try on many different people. I'm going to have to like bring a colleague with next year, and literally have a little salt station at this particular booth,
Oh,
and
that's great.
watch how that, and literally, take a photograph, have some salt water, and see how that increases the vibration and the frequency, and one's vitality is what salt water does. It really does increase your vitality.
That's great. I'm telling you, this is like one of the things I think that many people are going to ask us about whenever we talk about like what are some of the brands we endorse, about something that you can do every single day and put on your table, but put in your water every day. And this has been great. I've been learning a lot. I've wrote a whole bunch of notes down, and I'm going to send them over to Christy, and I'll talk to her about it. But I mean, this has been good all the way from South Africa. We've got, I mean, I loved when we talked about sugar cravings. We talked about how it helps, like just like your stomach acids. This is great about how it actually helps with your HCl in your body. Man, this is good, Sam. I appreciate you so much for joining us
Oh, yeah,
today.
it's
I
such
mean, can you
a
tell
pleasure.
people where to
So
find
fabulous.
Oryx and you, like on Instagram and on social media and your website?
Thank you. So for those who are listening, so Oryx, and in fact, Oryx, for those of you watching, this beautiful creature on the box, and I'll show you one. I mean, this is just my son when he was 7, he bought me this. So these beautiful animals are, oh goodness, maybe, so they're 2 meters tall, which would be, I think, 6 feet tall, more or less. They live in the Kalahari Desert, so they're endemic to the Kalahari.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a 75-mile walk through the Kalahari, through the Namib Desert, and I had close encounters. So Oryx is Oryx, which is the Latin name for this beautiful gazelle. And
Yep.
desert has only one S, not two. Dessert has 2 S's. You always want more dessert, and salt. So at Oryx Desert Salt is our Instagram handle. If you would like to, I do a lot on LinkedIn. So I have a fairly interesting surname. It is Skyring, as in ring in the sky, Samantha
Skyring.
Skyring. And you can, would love for you to follow me on LinkedIn. Obviously, Facebook is the same as Instagram. And then in Whole Foods, it's available, and on Amazon. And we also have a Shopify site where you can get a really good deal. And currently we have bulk 4.4-pound bags. So for those of you who are making sauerkraut, or you've got a big family, and you don't want to keep going back and forwards to the shops, you can buy yourself a sort of a bulk bag.
Mm-hmm.
And please do some of the experiments. Another one that I'm testament to myself is sleep. If I'm in a sort of a highly stressed state and I find my sleep is not so good, I take a teaspoon of salt with some honey before I go to sleep. And after a few days of doing that, it definitely makes a difference.
Oh, that's so
So
good. That's
yeah.
great. I love the practicality of it. I love that you've actually you've done personal experience, and I want everybody out there to try these things. And I want you guys to give us feedback. So you guys are going to have a lot of things in our descriptions with the podcast. Sam, thank you so much for joining us today. All right. I want
Pleasure.
everybody to follow her and look
Awesome.
at all of the stuff yet.
There's one more product I just want to alert you to. It's this very sweet, tiny little travel salt and pepper shaker, which are available from all world market stores, because once you get hooked onto Oryx, you're not going to want to put sea salt on your food. And this means you can put it in your gym bag, you can put it in your lunchbox, on your office desk, in your picnic basket, if you're going on a road trip, or if you're going hiking for the day. It's really convenient. It's practical. It means you've always got your salt on you. Yeah, you can grab those from World Market. And
Thank you so much. All right. This has been great. It's been good. I got it right here. So everybody out there, please give her a follow. Please check Oryx out. It's delicious and it has so many health benefits. And thank you again for taking your time out and joining us today, Sam. We really appreciate it. All right. From all of us here, guys, for the Ancient Health Podcast, please give us a like and subscribe. Or if anybody you know out there is consistently dehydrated, that really has issues with stomach issues, or any type of imbalance within their musculature, like cramping, please send them to their website and to their Instagram feed. All right. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate it. All right.